All right, so closing talk, a little bit less formal, maybe, hopefully. So I've had this idea for a while, actually, to do a short presentation about stuff that people maybe don't know about yet, don't know about EasyBuild yet. So hopefully there's a couple of things you don't know about yet, and then my talk will be successful. So first thing, most people seem to think I implemented EasyBuild from scratch because I'm the currently developer, was release manager for a long time until Miguel sort of took over. I didn't actually come up with the idea. EasyBuild was already there when I joined the team in Ghent back in 2010. And our current tech lead is still there, Stijn de Weert. He created EasyBuild just out of pure need. And then gave it to me in 2011, and literally this happened. So this is EasyBuild. You're gonna take over from me. I don't have time for this anymore. And I was staring at the screen like, what the hell is this thing? What does it do? How does it work? And then start figuring things out and making it better. It was a pretty big mess back then. The first public release we have is 0.5, which is still on PyPy, which is 10 times better to what I started with. So, and we had lots of very good student interns who cleaned it up to a level where we were comfortable to release it in public. Like, we didn't have any unit tests. We didn't realize we needed unit tests to keep the thing stable. We needed a student intern to tell us that it's a good idea to have tests. So we discovered lots of things along the way. The EasyBuild logo we have, which I'm sure you've seen around, when we made it public, we wanted to have a nice logo. We had these blocks and easy and like stacking stuff like kids do. I made a bit of, I'm not a logo designer, you can tell, right? It's not very good. And some afternoon we had a whiteboard in our office and we started scribbling something on the whiteboard. It should look something like this. It's an actual picture of what we had on the whiteboard. And then somebody took the picture, traced it over, so we had a vector image of the logo, and that's been the logo ever since. And there was actually Belgian beer involved. That was on a Friday afternoon. And if you show this to a logo designer, they're like, did a kid draw this? No, the drunk Belgian drew it. So a little bit more serious, practical. You've heard about EasyBuild submitting jobs. I use this all the time. This is how we run EasyBuild regression tests, where we do 8,000 installations almost overnight. As long as we have enough empty worker nodes, EasyBuild just spreads the load across all the worker nodes. I have to check, but by default, it will use all the cores in the worker node, but you can like make it use a quarter worker node for every installation or things like this, so you can tweak it as well. So if you need to install TensorFlow and you don't have the toolchain yet, you just do --job --robot. It submits 66 jobs for you who sit waiting in the queue until the dependencies are there, and then they can get started. So by default, it uses Slurm as a backend, and it will set dependencies between the jobs to ensure things run in the right order. So if your boss goes, what the fuck are you doing? Aren't you supposed to be installing TensorFlow? He said, yeah, it's in the queue. And that's, yeah, it's one of the features I like a lot. You can install Spack with EasyBuild if you really want to try Spack. You can use EasyBuild to install it, that works. So you get a module for Spack to start playing around with. You can also use Spack to install EasyBuild, but yeah, I tried it yesterday and didn't work for me anymore. It's sort of a joke, right? This is actually something I did on April Fool's. I added a pull request for an easyconfig file for Spack to EasyBuild, and I added a pull request to Spack to add a package to install EasyBuild with Spack. Todd got very confused, like, what's your use case for this? It's Saturday and I'm bored and it's April Fool's. But actually, people do it this way. This is a screenshot from the CSCS user portal, where they tell their users, if you want to use starting Spack, you run eb name of easyconfig file to install Spack, you get a module, you load it, and you can get started with Spack. So, okay. Victor showed me this yesterday. I said, I need a screenshot. I need this. Something small, but I like a lot, and I get surprised every time I hit it myself. If you have a small typo in your easyconfig file, the name of an easyconfig parameter is off, you can swap 2 letters or you're missing a letter, EasyBuild will tell you have a typo, rather than just silently ignoring and trying to get something to do. I got this from a user, T. Gamblin, who tried to install Spack with EasyBuild, and he had a typo in the easyconfig file. So it's something small, but I hit it all the time, actually. It's cool. The command line options that EasyBuild has, some of them are quite long, but you actually don't have to type the whole thing. If you just type it partially and there's only one option that matches it, that's good enough. EasyBuild will not complain, it's not a known option. It knows, like, oh, you intended to type this, so I'll just go ahead and take the one option that matches and I'll continue. People have mentioned hooks. Alexander mentioned hooks. I think more people should know about the hook support that EasyBuild has. Was it Carlos who mentioned that they have lots of custom stuff hacked into framework and it prevents you from updating EasyBuild? If you use hooks, you won't have that issue. You can just do an in-place update of the latest EasyBuild version, and as long as your hooks are implemented in a good way, things should keep working. Yeah, Victor, take a mic, take a mic.
So what's the status of the dry run with hooks? Because the last time I tried the hooks, I had to actually import a lot of things in from the internal framework and do the dry run log myself for support of hooks. So how's the status of that?
You mean you have to check whether you're in dry run mode in the hook?
Yeah, and also do the print, you know, the logger myself for the info.
Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah.
So
the EasyBuild will log that it's triggering a hook. It will log the location of the hook file, I think. But then the hook starts running, and if you want to log something from the hook yourself, you have to do it yourself.
Yeah, but if in dry run mode, I think it still runs as it was, you know.
Yeah, maybe you want to do stuff only in dry run mode, in the hook. So, I mean, the hook is triggered. It's a piece of code that is triggered, and it starts running. And it's up to you what you do in the code.
No, what I mean is that there is no, you there have to say, if dry run, then don't do the command configure or something.
Yeah.
Right, so is there anything in the framework say if it's dry run, just whatever is there, skip, just print the logs and that's it, or not? Because you have to be really in sync with the framework to be in dry run mode.
You have to be careful that you don't run stuff when you're in dry run mode. That's what you mean.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a way we can avoid that.
Could you override the behavior of run command or something like that? So it doesn't actually run commands?
Only for the hooks.
Yes,
Yeah.
when you're in dry run mode.
Maybe you can. Actually, when you just call run command, the command will not execute in dry run mode. You have to force it to run in dry run. So that part is covered. As long as you call the run command function.
As long as you use run command. Then
Yeah, I understand it, but then you don't get the logs. You understand what I'm saying?
You should get the logs.
No, because you don't run.
So run command will, if it's in dry run mode, it will print the name of the command without running it and just then continue with the rest of the easy block or hook or wherever it was called from. So you should see it in the log. You will not see the output of the command because the command is not run.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but you can force it. If there's a command that you always want to run, no matter whether you are in dry run mode or not, you can force it to always run.
Yeah, okay.
So, I mean, it's code, and this code is executed as if it's part of framework or the easy block. So yeah, you have to know maybe a little bit about the internals, that's true, but at least you don't have to hack the framework.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
guaranteed. Yeah.
When you say you force it, it's just like a quark, is it, or is it a keyword argument? Or?
It has an option, force in dry run, something like that.
Thanks.
This was not that hard to implement, but I think it's a really powerful feature. You get hooks for each of the steps: configure, build, install, both a pre and a post hook. You get a start hook that fires as soon as EasyBuild fires, or at the very end, and then everything in between. So you can hook in all places that you want to or need to. And very often you would have a check like this that says only if I'm installing OpenAPI, that part of the hook will be triggered. So your hook module could get very big, and I think you can even give it multiple files. In hooks, is it a single module, or does it take multiple module files and it will collect stuff from all of them? I'm not sure.
What if we give a file and it has several imports?
You have a single file and
Several imports.
import, yeah, sure.
So single file and several imports, I do.
Yeah, but
But I think you can do comma. I'm not sure, but I think you can do comma.
yeah, I think you can give it multiple hook files, and then it just takes the first or last hook implementation. I'm not sure, but it's pretty well documented. But yeah, I forget. It's implemented, it's tested, it's documented, and then yeah.
And if you want more complex example, this is one in the PR that we should get.
Yeah, so there's an open pull request by Oko with their current/old hook implementation. We should probably add that in the contrib directory to have examples of what people can do or are doing with hooks. Yeah. So this has been mentioned during my talk on Wednesday, but there's a bit of it's not a fight between maintainers and contributors, but maintainers are trying very hard to keep up with contributors. If you get 2,000 pull requests a year, you have to organize yourself a bit. It doesn't happen automatically that everything gets processed. This is an overview of the last year of the number of open pull requests we have for easyconfig files. The blue graph is the total, and then the other ones are like depending on how long the PR has been open. And the worst part is actually not on the graph, but there was a while that we were over 500 open PRs, and we were like, okay, we'll have to organize ourselves a lot better to get this down. And you can see, like, in preparation for the EasyBuild User Meeting, I didn't have a lot of time to look at PRs, and it just spikes really quickly if you're not paying attention for a while. We're getting 40, 50 PRs a week. So if you're on holiday and you're not sure that, or you're not asking one of the other maintainers to keep an eye on PRs, then you get a spike. So yeah, we have to pay attention all the time. And we're now 12 or 13 maintainers. Not everybody's equally active, which is fine. But we're always looking for other people who are interested in becoming a maintainer. So, and becoming a maintainer, I mean, what we expect from you is very low. We're not asking you to spend half of your time reviewing PRs, but if you can just put in 1 or 2 hours every now and then, that's perfectly fine. So whatever you can do will help us. And there's maintainers that merge 100 PRs a month, and there's maintainers that merge 2 PRs a month, which is fine. With anything helps. The trace output, I'm not sure how many people do not know about trace. Alex does not. Okay, well, so this is inspired actually by Elmot. Elmot has a trace mode as well, where it gives you lots of details about which module files it's reading and what is triggering what. And the standard output in EasyBuild was a bit like non-informative, like I'm building and then it sits there for an hour, and is it hanging or is it actually doing something useful, and is it actually running? The only alternative you had was to make it spit out the log file to the terminal, then it starts scrolling, and you can't, it's impossible to follow. And this is like a middle ground. So it will show you important things like running commands, because that's where most of the time is spent. It will show you what the command is, when it started, so you get an idea of how long it has been running, where you can find the output. So you can tail this log file, it will just have the output of this specific command. And in the next EasyBuild version, it will also tell you in which directory the command is running, and something else, I forgot the other thing, but we're adding a little bit more useful information here. And once the command finishes, you get the exit code and how long it was running. So if you come back from lunch, you can tell, okay, it has at least progressed and it's sort of doing like I expected to. And also it tells you what it's checking in the sanity check, so you get a better idea of what it was doing, what it was checking, and so on. Another one that was added recently is missing modules or dash capital M. So I found myself doing a dash capital D, so a dry run short that gives you a full overview of everything, that marks things that are installed with an X or things that are missing without an X. And I was grabbing that output for things that were square bracket space, and grabbing for square brackets is annoying, so I got sick of it, so I implemented this. And this is nicer. It gives you this many modules missing, all the rest are available, and if you would run this with robot, it would install these missing pieces, and at least you know whether you're getting things right, I guess. You can, since about a year, I think you can use EasyBuild as a library. So this was not possible before because of some internal stuff in framework. But as long as you call the setup configuration function first, before you do anything else, you can do imports, but you cannot run any functions. As soon as you do the setup configuration thing first, which will pick up environment variables and EasyBuild configuration files, or if this is a script and you give it arguments, it will also pick up the arguments for the script. It sets up the EasyBuild configuration, and then from then on you can do anything. You can call internal functions like write file, read file. You can create a modules tool instance and check for available modules. You can load modules in a Python script. Yeah.
What's the commitment for the internal API to be stable, so that you can reliably use these internal interfaces?
We're very difficult.
question-
Even with the internal API, we're very difficult to changing things because we're very aware that we don't control all the easy blocks out there. So, of course, we will not break easy blocks in our own repository. And we just assume that if there's a function, like in file tools somewhere, we want to change its behavior, we'll add an option so we can have a flag to move to the change behavior, but the default will stay the same. So it's pretty safe to rely on the API of the framework and assume that default behavior will not change.
Okay.
Yeah.
Major versions may break things.
Yeah, of course. EasyBuild 3, 4, 5, but then it will be clear in the change log if we switch to default or something, like we switch to L mode by default, things like this.
I mean, it says that you're going to have internal API breaks. You re-announce?
We mentioned it clearly in the change log, yeah. Yeah. And we will only do this for a new major version. We will not, like what write file does now by default, like not overwrite by default, or it creates the directory where the file will be by default. All these standard things will stay the same unless we really go to a new major version and we have a good reason to change the default behavior.
Is there any mechanism that I can find out what's the EasyBuild version of that API? So there any from EasyBuild something and get the version, and then I can do if pragmatically say
API version is the EasyBuild version. It's the same thing. We don't have a separate API version, but there's a way you can ask what's my current EasyBuild version. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I sometimes use this when I'm thinking about a new feature, but I don't want to go and hack in framework and then have like a half-finished thing sitting in my Git repo, and then when I have to fix a bug, I have to git stash or create a branch or things flying around. Sometimes I just do it in a script to start playing around with it and see. And if I'm happy with it, I figure out a way to get it into framework. Yeah. And then last but not least, the best feature, and hopefully that became clear in the last couple of days, is the EasyBuild community. So I forgot who it was, but somebody mentioned Casper maybe. Somebody mentioned like that this is one of the very nice things about the EasyBuild community. You get a bunch of experts in the same room, whether it's Slack or the mailing list or a physical room like this. And even things not directly related to EasyBuild, you can still ask and maybe somebody can help you out. Todd Gamblin, Massimiliano are also in the EasyBuild Slack. I'm in the Spack Slack, and it happens that we help out each other. And there's actually, I didn't have a slide for this, but Massimiliano briefly mentioned it. This one. So this Spack thing is a new project with a new organization. This is a collaboration between Todd, Massimiliano, and myself. Massimiliano has done all the work that's here up until now. I haven't done anything else other than try to design a logo, which is not there yet. Yeah, but we've discussed this idea for a while, and this is actually a Spack feature that they're extracting from Spack because they know other projects like EasyBuild could use this as a library and talk to it. So what it does, and it doesn't have any good examples yet, but it's two repositories. The Spack one is a Python library that you can talk to, which provides the functionality. There's a separate repository which has a JSON file, a big JSON file with stuff like this in it. And basically what it does is you can ask the library, what's the processor of the system I'm on? And it will tell you it's a Haswell. Like it will give you a string Haswell. And you can compare the processor I'm on, is this newer or older than Sandy Bridge? So you can it knows, it has a concept of ordering things like this. So EasyBuild could use this. Like people have shown that they have the name of the microarchitecture in the path, and everybody's using a slightly different name. Part of the goal of this is to standardize that and to get people to use these names. And EasyBuild could leverage this as a library, and you can actually ask EasyBuild, like give it a template of an installation path and just plugs in the microarchitecture for you. So they fleshed this out of Spack, and it works. It works quite well in Spack. I'm not sure we're fully happy yet with how this data is organized, because this is going to be tricky to maintain. And the way they've been doing it now in Spack, and I think they have a good reason for it, but I forgot what the reason was. So they keep track of the CPU features here in a long list, even though they have this kind of hierarchy thing. So a Haswell takes everything from Ivy Bridge, because it's like Haswell is the next generation after Ivy Bridge, but still they list all the features, even though most of these are in Ivy Bridge as well, except for AVX2 maybe. I'm not sure why they have the same list over and over again. There is a reason, I forgot what it was.
There are occasions when you lose a feature.
Yeah, but then you should add a way to mark that you lost a feature, rather than copy pasting the same list over. So yeah, there's some things here that can maybe improve, but we're still, or Massimiliano is still figuring things out, I guess. And it's mostly x86 now, but there's some ARM stuff in there as well, and some, I think there's one power being recognized as well. So this is not only for x86, it's for anything relevant in HPC in the long run. And we're sort of hoping that we can get vendors to contribute to this as well. So that Intel says, there's a new processor coming, just add a new section here for the new processor, and then Intel defines the code names, because they do, right? We're not inventing things here. So that would be really nice. Whether that will happen, I don't know. I think there's projects like this out there, but they're not open source. So there's tools that you can run that will tell you what kind of processor you have that does more than just cat proc CPU info. But we haven't found anything open source at all.
I think that there is one called CPU ID that has all this, but it's just for Intel machines.
Not only just for Intel machines, but it's a C tool. It's not a library.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have this concept of ordering things at all. It just spits out data. So it's a different type of project.
So is the idea integrate this in EasyBuild?
Yeah, certainly to let EasyBuild use it as a library. I don't think we'll copy the code. We'll do an import Spack, which will pick up the JSON file and So if you install it as a Python package and EasyBuild can do the import, then yeah.
Is there any roadmap for it?
You can open a pull request for it. No, I think now it's maybe a little bit too early maybe because it's not mature yet. I don't think there's a tagged release yet. We'll probably play with this a bit before we start stamping a version on it. And in EasyBuild, we want something stable, right? We want a released version that we know, okay, because you have to be a little bit careful. As soon as you start adding names to something and you push it out there, you cannot change the names anymore. People will rely on it pretty hard. So that's something we want to be sure first, that we're not going to fiddle with the names before we start using it in EasyBuild. Yeah. So I have to discuss this with Todd, will be at FOSDEM, and he's giving a talk about this at FOSDEM. So he's actually making Massimiliano do the work, and he will do the talk, but yeah. So, but it's something we're collaborating on, and we've been discussing for a while. And I'm very happy that they're willing to flesh it out. They did it in Spack first, and they knew like this is something other projects can use as well, so we flesh it out, give it a license that many projects can use, and yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Is this something then that we would be importing in framework and replacing like native, like Arch native with something from this? Just pick it up directly from here.
It knows what the compiler options are for these. So this Massimiliano showed this in his talk, right? It's literally using this. Rather than we do March native, you could use this as well.
If we're bringing in new compilers, it makes it easier, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to go do that work.
I think by default we'll stick to March native in EasyBuild. Certainly in 4. Maybe in 5 we can reconsider it, but we can give you an option that says listen to Archspec and use these options instead.
You had that use case, right, where actually it's not a good idea, so always, right?
Yeah. So we have to be careful with changing defaults in EasyBuild, but we can certainly add it as an option, a configure option. You tell EasyBuild follow this path, don't do native, and then if we see it's a better default, we can change it in EasyBuild 5 and listen to this instead. Yeah. And it's also, so the JSON file is separate because the idea was the main Archspec will be in Python, which is good for Spack and EasyBuild. But the idea is to let other languages also write the code to process the JSON file. It's not a lot of code. The real value of this is in the JSON file that has all the data, has all the knowledge. And the code around it is very small. So if somebody wants to write it in Go, Victor, if you need a Go project, yeah, it could be it. And I'm not sure how well documented it is now, but there's stuff here, but it's not very extensive, I think. There's 2 or 3 basic things that you have to implement to the ordering, the reading of the JSON file, simple things. So it's not rocket science to implement this in a different programming language and offer it as a library that includes the JSON file. Yeah, I just wanted to mention because I think it's nice that we can actually show that Spack and EasyBuild people can work together rather than just joke around and try to annoy each other with features that the other tool doesn't have. Yeah. All right. That's it. We have half an hour for more discussion and question if people are up for it, but I cannot stay longer than 1 because I have to run to catch a flight to Brussels for FOSDEM. But yeah, other than that, I guess we can wrap up. Thanks a lot, everyone, for coming here. Some of you did a long trip, and we're already brewing on evil plans for the next user meeting next year, finding a nice location. So hopefully you can come again. Thank you.